The stars looked different from here. Ambassador Tae-min stood at the observation window of the Times Horizon's Promise asterisk, watching as the massive space station grew larger with each passing moment. Convergence Prime was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It stretched across space like a small moon, its surface covered in towers and docking bays that glowed with lights from 1,000 different worlds. "We're being hailed," Captain Jiwon said from behind him. Her voice was calm, but Tae-min could hear the tension underneath. This moment had been 50 years in the making. 50 years since humanity first broke through the light barrier and discovered they were not alone in the universe. Tae-min turned from the window and straightened his jacket. "Open the channel." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a being that looked like it was carved from purple crystal. Its face had no expression that Tae-min could read, but its voice was smooth and ancient. "Welcome, representatives of Earth. We are High Chancellor Morthus of the Galactic Unity Council. You have traveled far to reach us." "The honor is ours, High Chancellor," Tae-min replied, bowing slightly. Dr. Hana, standing beside him, did the same. She was young for a chief scientist, barely 30. But her understanding of alien cultures had made her invaluable to this mission. "Please dock at Bay 773. The Council is eager to meet you." The hologram faded. Jiwon guided the ship into the docking bay with practiced skill. As they landed, Tae-min felt his heart beating faster. Everything humanity had worked for came down to this moment. The Council ruled over 847 species. They maintained peace across half the galaxy. And now, after decades of messages and diplomatic exchanges, they had invited humanity to join them. The airlock opened with a hiss. Beyond it stood 3 beings, each from a different species. The first looked vaguely reptilian, with green scales and vertical pupils. The second was covered in what looked like insect armor, with multiple arms folded across its chest. The third was humanoid but taller, with blue skin and no visible nose. "I am Counselor Vex Tar," the reptilian said. His voice had a hissing quality that made the translator work harder. "On behalf of the Council, we welcome you to Convergence Prime." They were led through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Everywhere Tae-min looked, he saw aliens of different shapes and sizes, going about their business. Some walked, some floated, some moved in ways he couldn't quite understand. The technology around them was far beyond anything on Earth. Walls that shifted color as they passed. Gravity that seemed to work differently in each section. Energy barriers instead of doors. Dr. Hana leaned close to him and whispered, "Did you notice how they're looking at us?" Tae-min had noticed. Every alien they passed stopped to stare. Some whispered to each other. There was something in their expressions that made him uncomfortable, though he couldn't quite place what it was. The council chamber was enormous. It was shaped like an amphitheater, with seats rising in circles around a central platform. Hundreds of beings sat in those seats, representing species from across the galaxy. The air hummed with translation devices working in real time, turning thousands of languages into something each being could understand. High Chancellor Morthus sat at the highest point, his crystalline body reflecting the lights around him. "Humans of Earth," his voice echoed through the chamber. "You stand before the Galactic Unity Council. For 50,000 years, we have maintained peace and prosperity among the civilized worlds. Today, we consider your petition to join us." Tae-min walked to the center platform. His hands were steady as he activated the holographic display they had prepared. Images of Earth floated in the air around him. "Honored council members, humanity comes before you in peace and friendship. We know we are young compared to many of you, but we have achieved much in our short time among the stars." He showed them humanity's accomplishments, the terraforming of Mars, the medical breakthroughs that had doubled human lifespan, the cultural diversity of Earth, where hundreds of languages and traditions still thrived. The art, the music, the literature that humanity had created. The council listened. But as Tae-min spoke, he noticed something that made his stomach tighten. Many of the council members were exchanging glances. Some were making gestures to each other. If he didn't know better, he would say they looked amused. Dr. Hana was watching too. Her fingers tapped against her tablet in the pattern they had agreed on. She saw it as well. When Tae-min finished his presentation, there was silence. Then, High Chancellor Morthis spoke. "Your achievements are impressive, given your circumstances. The Council recognizes that humanity has potential." The way he said potential made it sound like they were children being praised for a crayon drawing. However, Morthis continued, full membership in the Council requires not just achievement, but maturity, wisdom, contributions to the greater galactic community. These things take time. Councillor Vextar stood up. "We propose that humanity be granted probationary observer status. You would be welcome to attend council sessions, to learn from us, to grow under our guidance." What would this status entail? Tae-min asked carefully. "You would have no voting rights, of course," another counselor said, a being that looked like it was made of flowing water. "And you would be expected to follow council directives regarding trade, exploration, and development. But in return, you would have our protection, our knowledge, our experience to guide you." Jiwon's jaw clenched. Tae-min saw it from the corner of his eye. Dr. Hana had gone very still. "We came seeking partnership," Tae-min said slowly. "Are you saying that humanity is not ready for full membership?" "Not yet," Morthis said, and his tone was kind. Too kind. The kindness one might use with a child. "Perhaps in a few centuries, when you have matured further, when you have learned the proper ways of doing things," the chamber murmured with agreement. Tae-min stood on the platform, surrounded by beings who had already decided that humanity was lesser, not because of anything they had done wrong, but simply because they were young, because they were different. "We request time to consider this offer," Tae-min said finally. "Of course," Morthis replied. "Take all the time you need. The Council has waited 50,000 years. We can wait a little longer." As they left the chamber, no one spoke. But Tae-min could feel the weight of what had just happened. They had come seeking equals. They had found something else entirely. 3 weeks had passed since their first meeting with the Council. 3 weeks of diplomatic dinners and tours of Convergence Prime. 3 weeks of subtle condescension wrapped in polite words. But today was the ceremony where humanity would formally accept their place in the galactic order. Tae-min adjusted his collar for the 3rd time. Beside him, Envoy Soman fidgeted with her tablet. She was younger than the rest of the delegation, full of idealism and hope. Tae-min envied her that hope. His own had been slowly draining away with each passing day on the station. "They'll see," Soman whispered. "Once we accept this status, we can prove ourselves. We can show them what humanity is really capable of." Dr. Hana said nothing, but her expression was dark. Captain Jiwon stood like a statue, her military training keeping her face neutral. But Tae-min had served with her long enough to see the anger in her eyes. The ceremony hall was even more crowded than the council chamber had been. Every species in the council seemed to have sent representatives. They filled the seats in a rainbow of colors and shapes, all watching as the human delegation entered. High Chancellor Morthis stood at the center podium, his crystalline body catching the light. "Today, we welcome a new species into our community. Humanity has shown promise, and we are pleased to offer them our guidance and protection." Tae-min walked forward to accept the formal charter. But before he could speak, Councillor Vextar rose from his seat. "If I may, High Chancellor," the reptilian said, his voice carrying across the hall. "I believe it would be beneficial to provide our new friends with what I call a reality orientation, so they understand exactly what this arrangement means." Morthis gestured for him to continue. Tae-min felt his stomach drop. Vextar turned to face the human delegation directly. "Humanity, you must understand that you are very, very young. In cosmic terms, You are infants. Your entire civilization could fit into a single afternoon of some council members' lives. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. Vextar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Let us be honest about your shortcomings. Your people have spent most of your existence at war with each other. Thousands of wars. Millions dead in conflicts over resources, beliefs, territories. Even now, your world is not fully united. We have achieved peace, Taemin said quietly. Have you? Another counselor stood up. The insectoid one called Taxin. Your peace is barely 50 years old. We have species here whose peace has lasted 50,000 years. Your peace is an eye blink. More laughter. Taemin felt his hands curl into fists. He forced them to relax. Thaxin continued, warming to his subject. And what of your homeworld? You nearly destroyed it. Your atmosphere, your oceans, your forests. You consumed your own planet like parasites, and only stopped when you had no choice. We fixed those problems, Dr. Hana said, her voice tight. We reversed the damage. After causing it in the first place, Vextar replied. Tell me, how does a species claim to be advanced when it cannot even manage its own resources properly? A. The water-like counselor flowed to its feet. And your technology. You still use kinetic weapons. Projectiles. Metal slugs, fired at high speed. Do you know what we call species who use such primitive methods? Savages. Someone in the crowd called out. More laughter. Taemin saw Somin's face go red. Her hands were shaking. Captain Jiwon put a hand on her shoulder, a silent command to stay calm. You have no psionic abilities, another counselor added. No natural telepathy, no energy manipulation, nothing. You are mentally limited. Your lifespans are absurdly short, said another. How can you think long-term when you barely live a century? How can you plan for the future when you'll be dead before you see the results? You have contributed nothing to council knowledge, Thaxin said. No new technologies we didn't already possess. No philosophical insights we hadn't already discovered. No art that compares to the works of truly advanced species. What, exactly, do you bring to the council, besides your need for our help? The questions came faster now, from all sides of the chamber. Each one was designed to cut, to diminish, to remind humanity of their place. Your ships are slow. Your medicine is basic. Your understanding of physics is elementary. You've only explored a tiny fraction of your own region of space. You have conflicts over basic resources we mastered, replicating millennia ago. Vextar raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent. I think, High Chancellor, that we should perhaps reconsider even the probationary status. Perhaps humanity would be better served as a protected protectorate. We could guide every aspect of their development. Make sure they don't harm themselves or others. Several council members nodded in agreement. Taemin felt something inside him go cold and hard. High Chancellor Morthus tilted his head. An interesting suggestion, Counselor. However, I believe we can offer humanity another option. He turned to face Taemin directly. We understand that our initial offer may have seemed restrictive. So, let me present an alternative. The Council will grant you full protection. Any species that threatens you will face our combined might. We will share our knowledge with you, teaching you the proper ways of doing things. We will guide your exploration and development to ensure you don't make dangerous mistakes. It sounded generous. It sounded like everything humanity had hoped for. Then, Morthus continued. In exchange, we would require access to your systems for resource monitoring and extraction. Your technology would be shared with the Council database, allowing us to guide its development. And your ships would follow Council-approved routes and methods. Dr. Hana's face went pale. You're asking us to give you control of everything. We're offering to help you, Morthus said gently. To protect you from your own inexperience. Is that not what a wise parent does for a child? Captain Jiwon's hand went to her sidearm, then dropped. But Taemin saw the gesture. He saw the rage in her eyes. He saw Samin's tears of humiliation. He saw Dr. Hana's look of betrayal. They had come in peace. They had come with hope. They had come believing that the galaxy was full of species who would welcome them as equals. Instead, they had found this, a council that saw them as nothing more than children, at best, savages, at worst. A council that would take everything humanity had to offer and give nothing but condescension in return. The chamber waited for Taemin's response. Hundreds of alien eyes, watching to see how the primitive humans would react, waiting to see if they would accept their place at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy. Taemin looked at Morthus. Then, at Vextar. Then, at all the council members who had spent the last hour tearing humanity apart, piece by piece. His face was completely calm, completely neutral. "May we have a moment to discuss this among ourselves?" he asked. "Of course," Morthus said. "Take all the time you need." The human delegation huddled together. In whispers too quiet for the alien technology to pick up, they spoke. When they broke apart, every human wore the same expression. Not anger, not fear. Endarly, with C, something colder. Something harder. Something that should have warned the council that they had made a terrible mistake. The chamber fell silent as the human delegation turned back to face the council. Every being in the room leaned forward slightly, expecting to hear humanity's grateful acceptance. Perhaps there would be some negotiation, some attempt to salvage a bit of pride. But in the end, they would accept. Everyone always did. Taemin walked back to the center of the platform. His footsteps echoed in the quiet. He stopped, looked up at High Chancellor Morthus, and then let his gaze sweep across every council member present. When he finally spoke, his voice was perfectly calm, perfectly measured. "We thank the council for their time, and for their very candid assessment of humanity." He paused. The pause stretched longer than was comfortable. Several council members shifted in their seats. Humanity respectfully declines the council's generous offer. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The translation devices around the chamber worked overtime, checking and rechecking what they had just heard. Surely there was an error. Surely the primitive humans hadn't just refused. Counselor Vextar was the first to recover. "Yes," Taemin replied simply. High Chancellor Morthus leaned forward, his crystalline body refracting light in strange patterns. "Ambassador Taemin, I'm not certain you understand the gravity of what you're saying. No species has ever declined council protection and guidance. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Without us, you would be vulnerable to countless threats." "We understand," Taemin said. "We understand perfectly. Then surely you see that you need our help," Thaxon said, his insectoid voice clicking with confusion. "You are young, inexperienced, alone. You admitted yourselves that you have only been in space for 2 centuries. Taemin looked at the council member who had just spent the last hour listing every one of humanity's failures. "We came here seeking partnership. We came hoping to find friends among the stars. Species we could work with, learn from, teach in return." He paused again, and this time his voice carried just the slightest edge. Dr. Hana stepped forward, her tablet in hand. "We are also formally requesting that all shared research data be removed from council databases. Any information humanity has provided during our diplomatic exchanges is hereby revoked." "You can't do that," the water-like counselor said. "Once information enters the collective knowledge, it belongs to all." "Then you're stealing it," Dr. Hana replied flatly. "Which I suppose shouldn't surprise us at this point." Captain Jiwon's voice cut through the rising murmurs. "The Times Horizon's promised times will be departing Convergence Prime within the hour. We request that the Council respect our territory and remain outside the boundaries we have established. Any ships entering human space without explicit permission will be considered hostile." "This is absurd." Vex Tar stood up, his scales rippling with what might have been anger or disbelief. "You're being emotional. Irrational. You're proving exactly why you need our guidance." Taemin looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "You spent an hour telling us everything wrong with humanity. You called us savages, children, primitives. You mocked our wars, our short lives, our technology, our achievements. You offered us vassalage and called it protection." He started walking toward the exit. The rest of the delegation followed. "Ambassador," Morthus's voice rang out across the chamber. "If you walk away from this, there will be consequences. The council will not extend this offer again." Taemin stopped at the doorway. He didn't turn around. "Good," Saman added. "We don't need your permission to exist. You're making a terrible mistake," Vextar called out. "You need our protection. There are species out there that will destroy you without the council's shield." This time Taemin did turn around. His face was completely neutral, but his eyes were hard as steel. "How?" Thaxin demanded. "With your primitive weapons? Your slow ships? Your limited understanding? If we're as primitive as you say," Captain Jiwan said quietly, "then it shouldn't matter to you what happens to us." The human delegation began packing up their displays and materials. They moved with calm efficiency. No rush, no panic, just professional withdrawal. The council members watched in growing confusion and discomfort. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. "Your people will suffer for this pride," another counselor said. "When the first hostile species reaches your borders, you'll come back begging for help." Dr. Hana paused in her packing. "Do you know what we learned in the last 3 weeks? We learned that the council isn't interested in cooperation. You're interested in control. You've built your entire civilization on keeping everyone beneath you in their place. You don't want partners. You want subjects." "That's not true," Morthus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it?" Taemin asked. "When was the last time a new species was granted full membership immediately? When was the last time you treated a younger civilization as equals?" Silence answered him. "That's what I thought." He sealed the last container. "Humanity will find its own path among the stars. We always have." Vextar tried one more time, his voice taking on a desperate edge that surprised even him. "You're being foolish. Emotional. You can't survive alone. The galaxy doesn't care about your pride." "No," Taemin agreed. "It doesn't. But we do." The human delegation walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in a chamber that had fallen completely silent. No one tried to stop them. No one quite knew what to do. This had never happened before in 50,000 years of council history. As they reached the door, Morthus made one final attempt. "Ambassador Taemin, please, reconsider. We can negotiate. We can find terms that satisfy everyone." Taemin stopped. For a moment, the council members thought they had won. Then he spoke without turning around. "You had your chance to negotiate. You chose mockery instead. We came to you with open hands and open hearts. You chose to humiliate us. So now, you can watch us leave. And you can wonder if maybe, just maybe, you made the wrong choice today." He walked through the door. The others followed. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. In the ceremony hall, 847 species sat in stunned silence. High Chancellor Morthus stared at the empty platform where the humans had stood. Councillor Vextar's jaw hung open, showing his sharp teeth. Thaxin's multiple arms hung limply at his sides. "What just happened?" someone finally asked. No one had an answer. Outside the chamber, in the corridor leading to their ship, the human delegation said nothing. But if any council member had been watching, they would have seen something that should have frightened them. The humans weren't angry. They weren't upset. They were determined. And sometimes, determination is far more dangerous than rage. The times Horizon's Promise Times left Convergence Prime exactly 1 hour later. Its engines burned bright as it turned away from the massive station, away from the Council, away from everything humanity had hoped to find. Behind them, they left a council that had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. A council that had never been refused. A council that didn't understand what they had just lost. Ahead of them lay the infinite darkness of space and an uncertain future. But for the first time since arriving at Convergence Prime, the humans smiled. 6 months after humanity walked away from the Council, High Chancellor Morthus called an emergency session. The chamber was less full than usual. Many council members had stopped attending regular meetings, confident that their 50,000 years of peace would continue without much effort on their part. "We need to discuss the human situation," Morthus announced. Councillor Vextar waved a clawed hand dismissively. "What situation?" They left. "They'll be back within a year, once reality sets in. Young species always return." "That's what concerns me," Morthus said quietly. "They haven't returned, and our attempts to contact them have been unsuccessful." "What do you mean, unsuccessful?" Thaxon asked. "They won't answer our messages." Human colonies that previously welcomed Council trade ships now turn them away. Their explorers avoid our space entirely. It's as if they've decided we don't exist. Vextar laughed. "Let them sulk. They'll come crawling back when they need something." But they didn't come back. The months turned into a year. The Council sent envoys to human worlds. Each one was met at the border by human security forces and told politely but firmly to leave. "We have nothing to discuss. Please respect our boundaries." Meanwhile, across human space, something was happening. Something the Council didn't see until it was too late. On Earth, President Hagen addressed the United Government. "The Council showed us what they think of humanity. They think we're weak, primitive, unworthy. So we will prove them wrong. Not for their approval, but for ourselves." Admiral Do-hyun stood before the military council. "We initiate Project Autonomy today. Every resource, every mind, every factory will be dedicated to one goal: making sure humanity never needs to bow to anyone again." In research facilities across human space, Dr. Yuna and thousands of other scientists worked day and night. The Council's technology had seemed impossible to match, but humans had something the Council had forgotten over their thousands of years of peace. They had urgency. They had motivation. They had something to prove. "We've done it, Doctor," Yuna said, her hands shaking as she showed the test results. "Faster than light travel, that's twice as fast as Council ships. And we did it without their help." Director Minho oversaw the construction of defense stations along human borders. Massive platforms bristling with the primitive, kinetic weapons the Council had mocked. But these weapons had been refined, improved, made devastating. If anyone attacked human space, they would learn why humanity had spent so much of its history at war. The Council began to notice changes, but they didn't understand what they meant. Trade routes that had gone through human space for centuries were suddenly closed. Council ships had to take longer paths, costing time and resources. "It's a minor inconvenience," Vextar insisted. But it wasn't minor. The extra distance added weeks to some routes. Goods arrived late. Costs increased. Then came more disturbing news. 3 separate alien species had applied to join something called the Coalition of Independent Worlds. All 3 had one thing in common. They had been rejected by the Council as not ready and had chosen to align with humanity instead. "This is absurd," Thaxon said. "Apparently they disagree," Morthus replied, reading the reports. "The Coalition offered something the Council never had: equal partnership, no hierarchy, no probationary periods, just cooperation between independent worlds." 1 year after humanity's departure, a Council exploration ship encountered a human vessel at a border system. The Council captain, eager to re-establish contact, opened communications. This is Council Ship Time's Eternal Wisdom **. We come in peace and wish to discuss reopening diplomatic channels. The human ship didn't respond. It simply scanned the Council vessel, recorded its position, and jumped away. The whole encounter took less than 30 seconds. The Council captain was baffled. They didn't even acknowledge us. But back at human headquarters, the data from that encounter was analyzed carefully. Every detail of the Council ship was recorded, studied, and added to humanity's growing database. Know your neighbors, even if you don't trust them. More concerning reports reached the Council. Human technology wasn't just advancing, it was advancing at an impossible rate. Ships that seemed to appear and disappear at will, defense platforms that Council sensors could barely detect, energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. How are they doing this? Vextar demanded. They've been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. Dr. Hana, if she had been there, could have told him. Humans had spent those 2 centuries in a rush. They hadn't had 50,000 years to become complacent. Every advancement came from necessity, from competition, from the desperate drive to survive and thrive. While the Council had sat comfortable in their ancient peace, humanity had been running full speed ahead. The economic impact grew harder to ignore. Without access to human space, several Council trade networks collapsed. Resources that humans had provided were no longer available. The Council had taken those resources for granted. Now they scrambled to find alternatives. President Haitian gave a speech that was broadcast across all human worlds. A year ago, we were told we weren't good enough, that we were too primitive, too young, too flawed. They offered us subjugation, disguised as protection. We chose freedom instead. And look at what we've achieved in just 1 year. The hologram behind her showed the achievements. 50 new colonies established, 20 new ship designs, breakthroughs in medicine, energy, manufacturing, the coalition of independent worlds, growing from 3 species to 15. We did this ourselves, Hagen continued. Without the Council's permission, without their guidance, without their approval, because we don't need them. We never did. In the Council chamber, Morthus watched a recording of this speech. Something cold settled in his crystalline heart. He had ruled the Council for 3,000 years. He had seen countless species come and go. But he had never seen anything like this. They're not coming back, he said quietly. Of course they will, Vextar insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. They have to. Why? Morthus asked. What do we offer them that they can't achieve on their own? No one had an answer. 2 years after humanity's departure, the situation had become critical. The Council's economy was struggling. Their exploration had slowed. Their technology, unchanged for thousands of years, suddenly seemed outdated. And worse, other species were watching. If humanity could thrive without the Council, maybe they could too. Morthus called another emergency session. This time, the chamber was full. Everyone wanted to know what would be done about the human problem. We need to re-establish contact, Morthus said. Find out what they want. Make a proper offer. Why should we beg them for anything? Vextar demanded. We are the Council. We've maintained order for 50,000 years. And in 2 years, 1 species has shown that they don't need that order, Morthus replied. That should concern all of us. Before anyone could respond, alarms began to sound throughout Convergence Prime. Red lights flashed in the chamber. A junior staffer ran in, his face pale with fear. High Chancellor, we're receiving reports from the outer territories. Something has entered Council space. Something we've never seen before. What is it? Morthus demanded. The staffer's voice shook. They're calling it the Kresh Swarm, and it's heading straight for us. The chamber erupted in panic. For 50,000 years, the Council had maintained peace. They had forgotten what it was like to face a real threat. Their defense fleets were ceremonial, their weapons outdated, their tactics designed for shows of force, not actual combat. And now something was coming. Something that wouldn't negotiate. Something that wouldn't be impressed by their ancient authority. Morthus looked at the star map showing the approaching threat. Then he looked at the section marking human space, far from the Kresh's current path. The humans were safe. For now, contact them, he said quietly. High Chancellor? Vextar asked. Contact the humans. We're going to need their help. The Council's delegation waited at the border of human space for 2 weeks. Their ship floated alone in the darkness. Automated human defense platforms, watching their every move. Every day they sent requests for an audience. Every day they received the same automated response. Your request has been received and is being reviewed. Inside the ship, Counselor Vextar paced back and forth. They can't just ignore us. They're doing exactly that, Morthus replied calmly, though his crystalline surface showed stress fractures from tension. And given how we treated them, I can't say I blame them. Finally, on the 15th day, they received a message. You are permitted to dock at Unity Station. Ambassador Tae-min will meet with you. Unity Station was nothing like Convergence Prime. It was smaller, newer, more functional than beautiful. But as the Council's ship approached, Vextar noticed something. Ships from dozens of different species were docked there. Species he recognized. Species that had left the Council, or been rejected by it. All here, working with humanity. They were escorted to a conference room. It was plain, simple, with a large window showing the stars beyond. Tae-min stood waiting for them. He looked older, his hair showing more gray, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Next to him stood Admiral Jiwon, now wearing insignia showing she commanded the entire human defense force. Dr. Hana was there too, with a team of scientists from multiple species. Not just humans anymore. High Chancellor Morthus, Tae-min said, nodding slightly. Counselor Vextar, please, sit. They sat. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Morthus cleared his throat. I suppose you know why we're here. The Kresh, Tae-min said. Yes, we've been monitoring the situation. They've destroyed 7 Council worlds in 3 months, Morthus said quietly. Our defenses can't stop them. Our weapons barely slow them down. They don't negotiate. They don't communicate. They just consume everything in their path. And you've come to ask for our help, Tae-min said. It wasn't a question. Vextar's scales rippled with emotion. Even now, even desperate, his pride fought against what needed to be said. The Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership, voting rights, complete access to all Council resources and technology, immediate elevation to senior status. Everything you refused us 3 years ago, Dr. Hana said. The situation has changed, Morthus said. No, Tae-min replied softly. Your situation has changed. Ours improved the moment we left your council. He stood and walked to the window. Do you remember what you called us? Primitive. Savage. Too warlike. Too short-lived. Too flawed to join your perfect council. Ambassador, please, Morthus began. Tae-min held up a hand. You mocked our kinetic weapons, called them outdated, laughed at our military thinking, said we were stuck in the past. He turned to face them. The Kresh use energy shields, don't they? Shields that deflect energy weapons. Shields that make your advanced technology useless. Morthus's surface pulsed with realization. But kinetic weapons go right through energy shields, Admiral Jiwon finished. Turns out our primitive weapons are exactly what you need. Vextar started to speak, but Tae-min wasn't finished. You said our short lives meant we couldn't think long-term. That we were too focused on immediate results. But that's exactly why we innovate faster than you. We don't have the luxury of taking thousands of years to solve problems. We have to figure things out, quickly. And you said we were too warlike, Dr. Hana added. Too violent. Too aggressive. Guess what? The Kresh are violent and aggressive too. And it takes warriors to fight warriors. The room fell silent. Then Tae-min returned to his seat. So yes, Counselor Vextar, we know why you're here. You need us. The species you mocked, the civilization you rejected, the primitives you wanted to subjugate. Now you need us to save you. Will you help us? Morthus asked quietly. Tae-min looked at Admiral Jiwan, then at Dr. Hana, then at the other humans and non-humans in the room. When he looked back at the council representatives, his face was unreadable. Do you remember what I told you when we left? He asked. I said humanity would find its own path. And we have. We've built something better than your council. A real coalition of equals. Species that work together because they choose to, not because they're forced to. I understand, Morthus said, his voice heavy with defeat. I'm not finished, Tae-min said. You see, there's something your council never understood about humanity. Something you couldn't see past your arrogance to recognize. He leaned forward. We don't abandon people to genocide. No matter what they've said about us. No matter how they've treated us. When innocent people are dying, we help. Not because we want something in return. Not because we need your approval. Hope flickered in Morthus's crystalline eyes. Then, you'll help? We will help fight the Kresh. Tae-min confirmed. But understand this very clearly. We don't answer to the council. We never will. We're not doing this for you. We're doing it because there are billions of innocent people in council space who don't deserve to die for your mistakes. Admiral Jiwan activated a holographic display. We've been studying the Kresh for weeks. Dr. Hana's team has identified weaknesses in their biological structure. We've developed weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. The display showed ship formations, attack patterns, and tactical plans. Vextar stared at it in awe. In 3 months, while the Council had been losing, humanity had already figured out how to fight the Kresh. Your traditional fleet formations won't work, Jiwan explained. The Kresh adapt too quickly to predictable patterns. We'll be using hit-and-run tactics. Fast strikes, then retreat before they can respond. It's called guerrilla warfare. We've been doing it for thousands of years. We'll also need to retrofit your ships with human weapon systems, Doctor, Hana added. Your energy weapons are useless. But railguns, missiles, mass drivers. The Kresh won't be able to defend against those. And you'll teach us these tactics? Morthus asked. We'll lead the defense, Tae-min corrected. This isn't a training exercise. Admiral Jiwan will command the combined fleet. You'll follow our orders, not the other way around. Vextar's pride flared. You expect the Council to take orders from humans? I expect the Council to take orders from people who know how to win wars, Tae-min replied flatly. Because that's what this is. A war. Not a negotiation. Not a political maneuver. A war. And we're very, very good at war. The truth of it hung in the air. The thing the Council had mocked humanity for, the endless conflicts that marked their history, had taught them something the Council had forgotten in their 50,000 years of peace. How to fight, how to win, how to survive. Will you accept our terms? Tae-min asked. Morthus looked at Vextar. The reptilian counselor's scales had lost their color. His pride, his arrogance, all of it had drained away in the face of necessity. Finally, he nodded. We accept, Morthus said. The Council will follow humanity's lead in the defense against the Kresh. Good, Admiral Jiwan said. Then let's get to work. We have a lot to do and not much time. As the planning session began, Tae-min watched the Council representatives. They looked diminished somehow. Smaller than they had 3 years ago. They had learned a hard lesson. That age doesn't equal wisdom. That peace can make you weak. That sometimes the species you look down on are the ones you'll need most. 3 months later, the combined fleet met the Kresh at the Convergence Gate. Human ships led the charge. Their primitive kinetic weapons tearing through Kresh defenses. Council ships, retrofitted with human technology and following human tactics, fought with an effectiveness they hadn't shown in thousands of years. Director Minho commanded the flagship Times unbowed asterisk. When a Kresh mothership targeted Vextar's disabled vessel, it was Captain Somin who moved her ship Times, Defiant Times, into position, sacrificing her shields to protect the Council ship. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the Kresh were broken, their mother swarm destroyed, the survivors fleeing back into deep space. The galaxy was saved, not by the ancient council, but by the species they had called primitive. In the aftermath, Morthus personally thanked each human commander. "We were wrong about you," he said simply. "Wrong about so many things." Taemin looked at the counselor who had once mocked him. "Yes, you were, but you're learning. That's what matters." "Will humanity reconsider joining the council?" Morthus asked. Taemin smiled. "The council, as it was, is finished. You know that. Your subjects have seen that there's another way. A better way. If you want humanity's cooperation, the council needs to change. Real equality, real partnership. No more hierarchy. No more probationary periods. No more judging species by age instead of merit. That would require restructuring everything," Vextar said. "Yes," Taemin agreed. "It would. The question is whether you're brave enough to do it." He looked out at the stars, where human and alien ships were working together to repair the damage. "We don't need your approval anymore. We've proven what we are. But if you're willing to meet us as equals, then maybe we can build something better together. Something worth protecting." Morthus was quiet for a long moment. Then his crystalline surface glowed softly. "Then, let us begin." Years later, the Galactic Alliance replaced the old council. It had no High Chancellor, no hierarchy of elder and younger species, just representatives working together as equals. Humanity took its place not as subjects, but as partners. And on Earth, in the center of the capital, they built a monument, not to the victory over the Kresh, but to the day humanity walked away from the council. The inscription read simply, "They mocked us. We turned away. And in silence, we became who we were always meant to be."